Hi, I'm the Dutch birder and it is my goal to provide you with the best information regarding the rarest bird scene in the Netherlands. Here is this week's top 10.
This week we start at number 10 with the red-footed falcon, of which, besides some flyovers, one bird at tail end was widely twitched. It is not rare for a red-footed falcon to be rather tame. I've seen a pretty tame female, a second calendar year male and a juvenile. This makes the species a most wanted for bird photographers. In August, most phalaropes we see are red-necked, but on the 31st, the first red phalarope since January was found on the Isle of Schiermonnikoog, because the bird that turned up 3 consecutive springs in the Lauwersmeer hadn't returned this year. So before much more will be found during fall migration, we find the species at this week's number 9 spot. At number 8 we have the pellet harrier, which have started migrating through the country. Mostly adult or almost adult birds this time of year. One male was present for multiple days at the Veluwe. Last week, due to the remnants of our nesto, we saw relatively large numbers of Balearic shearwaters along our coasts. This week, we only had one record of a bird seen flying slowly past 2 different spots on Schiermonnikoog. Although not that many broad-billed sandpipers are seen throughout the summer, each week at least one is present somewhere. This week, one was present in the Lauwersmeer, which could be observed from a relatively short range. Sadly, when I was there, recording my vlog about trying to find new species for the country, it had flown all the way to the back of the area, so I couldn't film it. 2 other broadbills were reported in northeastern Groningen for a single day. For this week's segment, in which I tell you what species to focus on the upcoming weekend, I don't have a list of all species, as that will be pretty much the same as the one from last week. But I want to point out this interesting weather pattern with easterly winds all the way from Russia across the continent. Southern Scandinavia, Denmark, the Netherlands, Belgium and Britain might be in for some nice species from the east. The first week of September is a bit early for most species, but what to think of species like Bard, Booted, Sykes, Bederveld and Blijf's reed warblers, red-footed falcons, Isobline or redback striped, red-breasted and collared flycatchers? The only thing we have to fear is that conditions might be too good for birds to come down from the sky. In next week's video, a recap of what this weather pattern has brought us. At number 5 we have the Rosy Starling. The early fall is a good time for juvenile Rosy Starlings, but most arrive in September. So maybe it was not a surprise that this week's bird was an adult. A month ago there was also an adult Rosy Starling present on the same isle. Could it in fact be the same bird that wasn't noticed for 4 weeks? If so, it would be a good sign as to how many rare birds are never found. Hopefully that is some inspiration to go birding more often, as there is always something rare to be found. This week, 3 black guillemots were seen during sea watches. The first from Terschelling during the summer week of the Dutch Youth Association for Nature Studies, the second a day later by the usual sea watches at Texel, and the third was flying east past Schiermonnikoog. We have to wait a couple of weeks though to see if and where the wintering birds will show up.
A small interruption to look at the rarest birds lingering on from previous weeks. This week, not that many new rare birds were found, but there were some megas lingering on from previous weeks. We will go through them at lightning speed.
We have the white-rumped sandpiper from the bulb fields, the long-billed dowitcher from Texel, the cittering wagtail from Rotterdam-Plaat, the American widgeon from Kwadehoek was seen again, as was the lesser scarp from the Northwolland dunes. It also turned out the lesser yellowlegs from Flevoland was refound by the original finder Diederik Kok, and there is still one short-toed eagle present in the Vochteloe Veen. The ringing session is in full swing now, and on Tuesday they had a good day at Castricum with a wryneck, ortolan bunting and this Blijf's reed warbler. Not the mega anymore it once was, but still a nice species to find during fall migration, when they are much harder to find than singing birds in spring. Did the Pacific golden plover from the Lauwersmeer also relocate to the Isle of Schiermonnikoog, as I suspect more species did this year, like the American golden plover and Terek sandpiper? For some fanatic island listers who missed the bird of last winter, it was a welcome catch-up species.
Before we continue with the rarest bird of the week, here's some news from the Western Palearctic.
This week saw again some additional records of South Polar skua in southern England and western France. Also this week, news broke that a pair of Blijf's reed warblers had bred in the UK for the first time. After the breeding record in the Netherlands in 2021, now the most westerly breeding record of this species. Denmark saw its third brown booby ever this week as one flew past Schagen.
Ja, hele tiden bag bølgerne. Ja. Ja. Jeg skal nok sige, at den rammer skibet nu.
Leaving the front of the ship now. Er det den, der ryger retur?
Nej, den går mod sydøst. Lavt over vand. Jo. Lige under horisonten, lavt over vandet. Ragnar, du skal lige tjekke med unge brune sule, om de har hvide mave eller brune maver.
Den har lysebrun mave.
Ja.
Den er
Den er lysbrun mave, der hedder kontrast.
Last week there was some confusion about an albatross species flying past Ireland. There were mixed reports of a black-browed but also a wandering. Things got more clear when an article about the report of the wandering albatross was put online. Turned out there were both a black-browed and wandering albatross flying in Irish waters. I have a link to the article in the description. And on the 29th there was also another report of a Barolo shearwater flying past Ireland.
And now back to the number one spot of the week.
13 days after a pygmy cormorant was seen flying over the dunes near Amsterdam, another one, or maybe the same bird, was seen flying over the Oostvaardersplassen. It landed somewhere far out of sight in the area. The next day, probably the same bird was seen flying over Diemen, which is to the southwest of the Oostvaardersplassen. It could well be the same bird as the one from 2 weeks ago, but in recent years dozens turn up in Germany and France during the summer, so 2 different birds is also a possibility. Can't be long before the first for Britain is found.
If you don't want to miss any new updates regarding the rarest birds in the Netherlands, then hit the subscribe button. Please like and comment, and I'll see you in the next one.